Welcome to this week's episode of the Jewish Diaspora Report. On this week's episode, we look into the Exodus effect. Let's get started. For many of my listeners, you probably already know that this week coming up is Passover. Passover is quite the important holiday for the Jewish people, and also technically for our Christian followers who celebrate Easter, which falls at the same time. I've done one episode in the past about Passover. If you want to go and listen to that one, it is season 4, episode 150, My Cousin Moses. It is an interesting look into the Passover story and how it's important to us today. I'll go over a little bit of the same material about the actual holiday of Passover, but if you want to go listen, you can get a little more of a different view from that episode. So feel free to check that one out. For those of my followers who might be less aware of the history of Passover, Passover comes from the book of Exodus, or Shemot, from our Torah, and it talks about the issues in Egypt. Once we get to Egypt, we become slaves, as many people know, and the Jewish people are stuck in slavery until Moses, one of our biggest and most important rabbis and teachers, comes along to help us get out of slavery and brings us eventually to the land of Israel. Along the way, of course, Moses gets the 10 Commandments and brings them down to us, and that is why we are now Israelite people and Jews. This event in the Jewish history, the Israelite history, is so important that it is required that every single Jewish person around the world will be celebrating the Passover Seder to remember and to mark this very important time that happened over 3,000 years ago. Some people believe somewhere between 1,500 before the Common Era to 1,200 before the Common Era. For 3,000 years, our people have been doing this same exact thing, remembering the time that we were in Egypt and that God brought us out of Egypt. It is so vitally important to the Jewish people that we remember this event that we are required as Jewish people to have a Passover Seder where we are required to relive and reenact the situation of the Passover Exodus. Often found in the Haggadah, which is the book we read on Passover, the rabbinic teaching from the Mishnah, part of the Talmud, the rabbis said that in every generation, a person is obligated to see themselves as if they personally came out of Egypt. It is a pretty simple concept. Reenact, relive, retell the story every generation as if you yourself was part of that group leaving Egypt. You can imagine how easy it is to forget what your history was. For example, if you're not Jewish, or maybe if it has nothing to do with Judaism, what was your family doing 3,000 plus years ago? I'm sure you don't know, but we Jewish people, we know exactly where our people were 3,000 plus years ago, just at this time of the year. They were leaving Egypt. And it is specifically because every generation has been doing this tradition of acting as though we too were the people leaving Egypt, so we never forget. This is something that is incredibly important in Judaism. It's so important that many people made a pilgrimage to Jerusalem during this time, which for my Christian followers, you'll know, is the reason why Jesus went to Jerusalem for the Last Supper, which, by the way, was a Passover Seder. He, too, would have sat around the Last Supper table and discussed what was going on during the Exodus. Obviously, it's very important for the Jewish people to remember their history, to understand what had happened in the past. But it seems like we kind of go overboard with this. Really? We have to pretend and reenact and do little plays and have these long seders that go into the middle of the night, all to remember what happened to our people? Is it really that important to live as though we too came out of Egypt? Seems a little bit overkill, doesn't it? Couldn't this just be an email? But I think if you understand why we do it, it might make a little more sense, especially right now. For those of you who have read the stories in the book of Exodus or sat at a Seder, you know about all the miracles. The book is filled with all types of miracles. Things like, for example, the 10 plagues. Some things that could never happen under normal circumstances. According to the Torah, Water turned into blood. The Nile River turned into blood, which then killed all of the fish. Under normal circumstances, if you went outside right now and found a river filled with blood, you might be a little bit concerned. You might think there's something going on here, which then turned into frogs that swarmed the land. And then you have lice and flies and boils and hail and a bunch of other really incredible things that you never would imagine. Why is it that we needed so many of these plagues? If you read the story, you'll know that the Pharaoh saw these things and agreed that they were crazy and God's clearly on the side of the Jews. But then it says that God hardened his heart. Multiple times over, he said, "Let your people go," and then changed his mind. Why did we need all of these plagues to happen? Why couldn't we just have the first plague? Or why couldn't God just let us go without any plagues at all? And the reason for this, I believe, is because it's important that the Jewish people, the Israelite people, saw these miracles. If God would have just picked everybody up and said, "Let's go," you could easily blame that on maybe the Pharaoh changed his mind. Maybe the Pharaoh wanted to be nice. Where would you have seen God in that situation? You would have just blamed it on a natural event. So some of these very not natural things happening were not meant for Pharaoh, but they were meant for the Israelite people to better understand that there is a God, he is looking out for you, and he's performing these miracles in front of your eyes. And I would say that it's definitely human nature for all of us to sit here and say, well, yeah, sure, it rained or it hailed. It does that from time to time. Why is it that God is in this story? It's just natural things, flies come around once in a while. Some people got boils and so they got sick. It probably happens all the time. But the funniest part is that as you go through these 10 plagues, you'll notice that they become more and more crazy in the sense that they can't be natural. For example, hail. If you read the biblical story about hail, you will find out that it is ice falling from the sky that then turned into fire. It was burning hail. Could you get anything more unnatural and impossible than burning hail, fire, and ice together? How, as an Israelite person, do you possibly believe that that could be natural? And yet, they sort of did. They needed a couple of more plagues in order to really understand what was happening here. Eventually, when you get to darkness, the darkness lasted for 3 days. Obviously, something that's very unusual. Everyone knows that the sun rises in the morning. Why is the sun not rising? It is for the Israelite people to understand that something big is happening. Believe your eyes. This is not normal. And for those people who were just busy in the fields doing their thing, or maybe just don't really think about God all that much, this is supposed to be a little bit of a wake-up call. Wake up. Look at what's going on right now. There is fire and hail together. Something big is about to happen. So the plagues weren't so much for the Egyptian people. It was way more for the Israelite people to understand. And sadly, as human beings tend to do, we kind of forget, we ignore it. It's not a big deal. It happens all the time. And even after all of these plagues, and finally Pharaoh lets us go, we get to the bank of what is known as, on occasion, the Red Sea, which is actually the Reed Sea, not the Red Sea. But nonetheless, the Jewish people, yet again, don't believe in what they had just seen. It had been maybe a few weeks since the situation with the plagues, and they'd already forgotten that God was on their side, and they didn't believe that Moses could split the sea. People were saying, "Let's go back. You brought us here to die." And then God split the sea and they went across. One final amazing sign to the Israelite people that God is on their side and that he can do miracles if you're willing to accept it and if you're willing to believe it. So for this week's podcast, I thought it was very important that we talk about why this is still important today. Why it's important that we as Jewish people will sit at our Seder tables and hear about plagues that we don't really care about anymore, that actually kind of seem a little crazy, like really, fire and ice together? Why is it that we have to act as though we too were at the Exodus? It is very likely because it needs to prepare us for thousands of years later what is happening in the world today. It is pretty incredible what we are seeing in front of our own eyes today. Many of you might have been somewhat ignoring it, somewhat assuming that it's all natural events. It's just coincidence. just like the Israelites did. When you are seeing footage that's coming out of Israel, of course it looks scary, it looks terrible, there are buildings being destroyed, there are even people being hurt, which is awful. How in the world is this a miracle? But just like the Israelites in the story of Passover, who might have seen the rivers turn to blood and said, I guess it's just something natural, you too are not giving the credit where credit's due. You might not be recognizing all of the incredible miracles that are happening every single day in the state of Israel. No question is it very difficult for the people of Israel right now. Things are not easy for them, much like we heard in the story of Passover. Before the Exodus, of course, the Israelites were complaining to God, "Where are you? Why are you not helping us? We are suffering under bondage. The Pharaoh is horrible." And then God came to save them. And in the state of Israel today, you might not be giving God the appreciation that he deserves. Yes, we can say we have Iron Dome. That was created by mankind. Sure, that might be true. But God gave us the ability to shoot rockets out of the air to defend ourselves. It is the most incredible technology ever invented for self-defense. And God gave it to the Jewish people. And most recently, now we even have the Iron Beam, which is even more incredible. We are now using laser beams to shoot missiles out of the sky with 10 cents of electricity. And apparently recently they said they are now putting those on planes. And God gave this to the Jewish people. You can blame this as a natural thing. The Jews are just really smart. But you have to see the miracle in that. Sometimes these miracles are just not that obvious. Kind of like why we needed so many at the 10 plagues. We can just pretend that these are actual real events caused by man or just good luck, I guess. Or we can see it for what it is, a miracle. Many of my listeners who keep up with what's going on in Israel might realize that a few days ago, a ballistic missile had a direct hit on the city of Arad in Israel, somewhere around the middle of the state of Israel, near the Dead Sea. In this city, there is a very large shopping center where many people go to shop on the weekend. Friday night and Saturday are big days for shopping if you're not religious. And by some miracle, recently this building was purchased by some very Orthodox Jews as an investment property and decided that they would make this building now closed from Friday night to Saturday night for Shabbat. And some may call it a miracle, but guess what day that ballistic missile hit around that mall that would have killed everybody in it? A very large shopping center filled with people. It was on a Saturday when it was closed and nobody was hurt. Is that a miracle? Some might say it is. Maybe we need to open our eyes. In the last month, between Iran and Hezbollah, they have fired up to 2,000 plus rockets, missiles, and drones at Israel, with an interception rate of 92%, according to the IDF, which is remarkable. The amount of projectiles being shot to kill Israeli people. And there have been so few deaths. Obviously, every single death is tragic and horrible, but considering how many could have died, this is incredible. This is nothing short of an act of God. And when those rockets do fall, they very frequently fall on empty shopping malls, or somehow seem to fall between buildings. Sometimes you can see them hit the road and not hit any building. Somehow people are safe in their shelters, despite the attempt to kill every last person in Israel. And meanwhile, well, for the majority of the people, they are completely safe in Israel, under this incredible amount of hostility from people who want us dead. We are actually able to get back and kill the people trying to kill us. Day after day after day, you hear about the IDF successfully taking out huge names from Hezbollah and from the Iranian leadership. This too is a miracle. You can chalk this up to great intelligence or amazing pilots. But to be honest, at a certain point, you have to realize how many dominoes have to fall in perfect order to ensure that these people are taken out. And then multiply that by the hundreds that we've taken out. The statistical probability of being able to do all of this stuff is pretty much off the charts. There might really only be one reason, which is that we have help from above. Unfortunately, we are merely human. we might not be able to understand or fully accept all of the miracles that we are seeing. And it's not really our fault. This has even happened to Jewish kings in the past. Many people who have studied the Bible or understand the history know the story of the Assyrian siege on Jerusalem. The Assyrians, one of the strongest armies in the region at the time, was camped out and ready to start an offensive against Jerusalem. But then, for some reason, overnight, the Assyrian army disappeared. Some say that there was a plague in the camp. Others say that the leader of the Assyrian army had to flee back to Assyria in order to protect his kingdom. But no one really understands why exactly the Assyrian army literally disappeared right before taking Jerusalem. According to the Talmud, King Hezekiah, following the saving of Jerusalem by some miracle, made the mistake of not understanding that that miracle was indeed caused by God. They suggest that he did everything right, but he just didn't understand that what he was seeing and what happened was something out of this world. It was not natural. It may have looked natural, but it clearly was a miracle from God in order to save Jerusalem. This was intended in the Talmud to tell the Jewish people not to take these seemingly natural miracles for granted. Understand where they're coming from and stop blaming it on coincidence or good planning or good luck. We need to recognize the miracles when they're happening, even if we don't understand them or they're incomplete. In the end, we can chalk all of these miracles up to just the IDF is a great group of people. They know what they're doing. We have the best generals and the best weapons. And of course, everyone is going to say it's only because of the United States and the money they give us, which is not true. You can listen to some of our old podcasts. But what we're missing here is the fact that there are miracles happening. And life isn't always great before and during those miracles. It is a struggle, just like in the story of Passover. But the reason why we needed those miracles to be so obvious and we needed 10 plagues and more was because it's so easy for us as human beings to just pretend that this is natural. We're just a really good army. The human beings who are running the IDF, they're just really good at what they do. We're not giving credit to where it belongs, which in many cases is God. And that's why for the last 3,000 plus years, every one of the Jewish people has been asked to relive the Exodus, to understand as if you too came out of Egypt. You saw the miracles. You understand that things can look normal, but God is working in the background. It is preparing us for this exact moment in time, where we can see the hand of God protecting the Jewish people, allowing us to defeat our enemies. That doesn't mean it's going to be free and easy, because like I said in the beginning, if Pharaoh just let us go, we wouldn't be able to see God in this incident. Unfortunately, to understand the good, you need to live through the bad. You need to be able to see what bad looks like so you can understand and appreciate when God has helped us. So this year, when you sit down at your Seder and you look at the story of the Exodus, understand why you are reliving it. You are reliving it to understand what life could be like if you see God's miracles. What could come next? And I hate to say, the Exodus might not even be necessarily a metaphor anymore. As the Jewish people of the diaspora look at what's going on in our communities and wonder, is this the sign that we need to go? Is this the sign that we, as Americans, Canadians, Australians, Europeans, are done in these countries? Our Exodus is now. We too need to look at God's miracles of what's going on in Israel and how he's protecting us and decide maybe it's time for us to go home. Every Passover Seder for thousands of years has ended with next year in Jerusalem. And maybe it's this year that we are going to be heading back to Jerusalem. It is no longer safe for us here, and God will protect us in Israel. According to the biblical prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, God will gather the dispersed of Israel and bring us back from all four corners of the earth. God will gather the remnant of his flock from all countries. Maybe this Passover will be different. Maybe we will look at the story and understand that this Exodus effect is happening now. We are seeing the miracles with our own eyes that we've been studying for thousands of years, that we've been reliving for thousands of years. And maybe next year we'll be in Jerusalem. This has been another episode of the Jewish Diaspora Report. Don't forget to check us out on social media at jdr.podcast. and check out some of our other episodes on your favorite podcast source. We'll see you next time.